Hello and welcome to the Mind Detox podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Newbigging. I'm a trauma-aware therapeutic coach and meditation teacher known for unifying therapy and spirituality, and I'm the author of 12 books, including New Beginnings, Mind Calm, and Mind Detox. I've also been teaching my insights and techniques via my award-winning academy for almost 2 decades. For this podcast, I usually share extracts from my Calm Clan community webinars. I'm also sometimes joined by guest experts for the occasional chit-chat. All so you can heal the hidden causes of anything problematic going on in your life, and so you can access more peace and enjoy the best life possible. I've been a monk and had to get myself out of a spiritual cult. I have a busy clinic with lots of fascinating clients, stories and takeaways. I'm usually creating a course or writing a new book, and I'm on my own journey of healing and knowing myself. So thank you for joining me for this episode. You never quite know what you're going to get, but I hope you get a lot from listening. And without further ado, let's begin. So hello and welcome to this chit chat with my good friend and the infamous, the famous, I don't know which one is more appropriate, Dr. David Hamilton, or sometimes known as David R. Hamilton, PhD, depending on the day. Thank you for joining us for this chit chat, David.
My pleasure. Very excited to be here.
Well, what I've done for today is I've created a slightly different format than I normally do with you. I've got a few quotes from the book, okay, and a few questions off the back of them, okay. So that might help you as well, because you know what you're kind of talking about, the bit of the book that I'm talking about. So I've got the quotes, I've got the questions ready, and we also just need to do a little quick caveat at the beginning because this is going out to a larger audience. And what is the name of your book?
The Joy of Actually Giving a Fuck.
And maybe the warning should have happened before I gave you the title, because the title has the F-U-C-K word in it. There is inevitably going to be swearing in today's conversation. So I apologize if you're triggered or you just don't like it for whatever reason, and you're valid to have that preference. But we are going to have to use the F-U-C-K word today.
It's all about the context it's used in, isn't it? I use it in the kindest possible context, which is why I've got a wee smiley face on it. It's about caring for people.
Exactly.
It's about, caring about each other. That's really what it's about.
You might be answering my first question, so let me interrupt you just there. And what I thought I'd like to start with is, I actually thought I'd start with reading the book description, the descriptions that's on the back of the book. Now, I'm going to have to read it because I didn't memorize it before today, obviously.
No? Oh my God, I'm so disappointed. I am so disappointed.
Sorry. But let me just start. I'm going to have to look away as I read this for a moment, but here's the description on the back of the book. Far from being fluffy sentiments, acts of kindness, whether given, received, or witnessed, are potent elixirs that have a profound and lasting impact on our mental and physical health. From boosting happiness to soothing the soul, kindness isn't just a feel-good notion, it's a powerhouse. I love that. That's probably the main reason I wanted to read this blurb. It's a powerhouse. It relaxes your nerves, lowers blood pressure, reduces inflammation, and even slows down aging at a genetic level. This book, David's new book, The Joy of Actually Giving a Fuck, this book serves as a beacon of light, urging you to spread kindness like wildfire. Because in a world where apathy reigns, giving a fuck is revolutionary. And when we do, we not only enrich ourselves, but bring joy into our communities and the wider world. What a fantastic book description.
Oh, thanks. That part took longer than any other part of the book.
Well, I'm glad I'm acknowledging it, right? So
thanks. Honestly, myself and the internal editor and the editorial team, we bounced back, and I'm not joking, from the beginning of January right through until April. We kept iterating back and forward. They said, we think we've got this. And I said, no, it doesn't fit with the style of the writing in the book. It has to be this. And they said, well, I see what you mean. But from a marketing standpoint, you can't leave out something. We kept tinkering back and forward, back and forward. And this literally was my final attempt on the Friday where it went to print on the Monday. And I said, right, this is it. I think we've got it. I think we've nailed it this time. And it must have gone through about 20 iterations to capture it. It's the longest I've ever taken to write such a small piece of text.
But I understand it because, I want to start by praising you because I feel you've written this book different to any other. It's got a completely different tone than I've ever heard, and a creativity in the writing style, a freedom in the writing style.
Yeah.
A boldness, and it just felt really you.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it took longer than normal to write or it just came out more naturally, but well done.
It took longer to iterate towards the end because the very first version of it was a bit more bit more dry, if you like. My usual, quoting the science and all that. And I thought it really has to. The style of the text has to match the expectations of the title. And then that's when I went through and had some fun, because that's actually how I speak sometimes at talks. And I thought, I'm just going to pepper it with things like this and punctuate it. And that was the challenging part about getting the back cover right, because none of the editors at Hay House have had to work with a book that's quirky, that's written in that kind of style. So they were coming from it from a marketing standpoint. And I was saying, I understand what you mean, but the back cover text has to meet the expectations of the title at the front. And this is why we kept going back and forward and back and forward. It was a challenge, I have to say, because I haven't written like that before, well, other than in some blogs, but not.
But our theme this month in the camp plan has been authenticity, and I really feel that this is your most authentic book, because it's how you speak.
Yeah.
You're not, written like how you should write, but you've just, let me start with a quote because I think it illustrates perfectly what we're talking about right now, and it'll get me into my first question. So it says in your book, kindness has the power to turn gray clouds into unicorn rainbows, one compliment at a time. Kindness is the unsung hero of the human experience. It's like chocolate for the heart, a good hair day for the soul, and a virtual high five for humanity.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? You must be proud when you hear that. That's really cool.
That was the introduction. That also took ages. See, I found the bits that people are going to read first, I took the longest to work on. It's just these kind of things. It's iteration after iteration after. You know what it's like yourself. You iterate, you edit, you edit, you edit, you edit, you edit and stuff. And I thought it has to be funny. And especially the introduction, it's got to be kind of light and funny. And what I was also trying to do is I really believe in the message of kindness, and I wanted to elevate it from something that we think of as a kind of fluffy sentiment, just oh, be kind kind of thing. And the reason I use the word powerhouse is I really wanted to elevate kindness up there to say, this has amazing potential to help us to help to heal our minds and our bodies, to help to make peace, to help to make us feel better, help us get in touch with each other, but also to transform the nature of our relationships, to make an impact on our workplaces, our homes, our societies. And I really, really believe that. And I thought, I'm really want to elevate this up. And so I need to speak to a different audience or a broader audience. And that's why the language is a bit more quirky. I was Googling things about how to communicate with, like, say, a 19-year-old or a 17-year-old kind of thing. Just little bits of language style that younger people are used to hearing kind of thing. So I peppered wee bits through there just to kind of say, well, that the book has to appeal to everyone, because I really, really believe in the message that kindness really isn't just this fluffy, whimsy, thing that we just sort of say and do. It really, kindness literally, when you be kind, it literally changes the shape of your blood vessels for a little while. That's remarkable. You be kind to someone and your heart's in it, you do it on purpose, and there's a dilation to your blood vessel actually physically goes like that. If that isn't miraculous, then I don't know what, And I think we don't realize that kind of thing actually happens. And that's why kindness reduces blood pressure.
And that's why you could say that kindness is our natural state. It's our natural way we're really kind of designed to be, because
Yeah,
it does an unhealthy reaction if we are doing the opposite. So it tells us that,
exactly.
one is in favor of nature and one
Yeah.
is against nature in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's what I covered a lot of that in I think it was the third chapter of the book, that kindness is our natural state. We have kind genes. In fact, they're some of the oldest in the human genome, at least 100 million years old, but possibly up to 700 million years. What that means, to illustrate, if you have genes that have lasted that long, it means they're pretty damn important and they play a big role in sustaining the health and well-being of the human body. Otherwise, they would have just died away
Mm-hmm.
10, 20, 30, 50 million years ago. The fact they're still here is because they're absolutely crucial. So these genes are kindness genes, are genes that naturally assist in our inclination to look out for each other, to make sure that we're all okay, to work together, to help each other in groups and teams and societies. It's when we're not being kind that we go against that natural thing, like you said, Sandy. And it's when we're not tapping into that natural sense that we introduce stress to ourselves. And that's actually one of the things that I talk a lot about in the book, that physiologically and neurologically, the opposite of stress is kindness. And they are. It's if you stop being kind, then you introduce more stress to yourself. And if you increase your kindness, you reduce the stress. And it really is like a seesaw effect, as many pieces of science now show us.
Well, they found that stress in the autonomic nervous system is one of the main causes of ill health in humans. And like you say,
100%.
this kindness gene, it wouldn't exist for that long if our survival didn't depend on it. That's reflecting this powerhouse
Yeah,
idea, right? Like
yeah.
literally our survival depends on
Depends on it.
kindness.
It really
And if you
does.
look at the world right now and all the things that we might be seeing in the world and we might see in the news or whatever, and makes us a bit stressed, release a stress hormone or whatever, kindness is the answer.
Yeah,
Surely.
absolutely. In at all different stages. I think we just don't realize. Sometimes you think, well, if I be kind to that person, they'll take advantage of me. And we're so used to having that kind of experience. And so a lot of challenges and difficulties come through mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes through just not having had enough experiences of kindness being reciprocated. Because maybe on some level we've learned through society not to trust that someone really has the best intentions at heart. Someone really wants to make peace, really want to save these people, want to do this. And sometimes we miss people in two sides of a conflict. Someone mistrusts, or both sides mistrust each other. And that often comes from a lack of experience in understanding and having that actual experience of what kindness does.
But it's also limiting kindness to just the one, I give you something, you give me something back. I give you
Yeah,
kindness, you give me kindness back. Whereas in the
yeah,
book, you talk about the ripple effect
yeah,
and how
absolutely.
not only like it reaches the shore, but then it comes back to you as well. So it doesn't, not only does it ripple through infinite amount of humanity, each act
Yeah,
of
yeah,
kindness, you never know, there's no way to prove where it ends.
yeah,
One
absolutely. It's
person
like a
being
wee,
kind, go ahead.
yeah, it's like you drop a pebble in a pond. And the R number of kindness, we know the R number, about R numbers from COVID times. It's the reproducibility rate. It's the number. The bigger the number, the more contagious something is. Now, the R number for kindness. Now, given the fact at the beginning of all COVID, the R number for that was about 2.3, 2.4, pretty contagious. The R number of kindness is somewhere between 3 and 5, substantially more, exponentially kindness. And researchers at Harvard and Yale actually measured the degree to what that wave goes out to, and they measured at least 3 degrees of separation. And just to illustrate that point, let's suppose we were to take an R number of 5, right? Just to make the point of what this 3 degrees of separation means. So it means that if you be kind to someone today, and it might seem seemingly small to you, because I think the most important kindnesses aren't the big noticeable ones that everybody hears about. It's the little things, the little words of encouragement and support. It's the checking in on people. It's those little things that we do all the time. But let's suppose you do one of these things. You show a wee bit of support or encouragement, anything even seemingly small. What normally happens is you then get on with the rest of your day. But what you don't see is what happens next. And what happens next is because of how you made that person feel. In psychology and sociology, they call it elevation. It used to be called helper's high, but now they call it elevation. It's any state that's more elevated. It could be gratitude or relief or happiness. It's any state that's more elevated than you were before. But because of how you made that one person feel, if you were to track that person over the rest of the day, which obviously you wouldn't, but if you did, you would find that that person would probably be kind or kinder to 5 people. That's what the R number of 5 means. Simply because of how you made them feel. And I think we've all had that experience. Someone says something or does something nice and you feel elevated. And what do? You're nicer to other people as a consequence, right? So, but those 5 people are at 1 degree of separation from you. If you happen to have a wee drone that was going to track those 5 people over the rest of the day, what you would find over the next 24 hours is each of those 5 people would be kind or kinder to 5 people. And what you would then have is 25 people receiving an act of kindness. And those 25 are at 2 degrees of separation from you. They're 2 social degrees separate away from you. But if you had a swarm of drones and tracked all these 25 people, what you would find is each of those, on average, would be kind or kinder to 5 people. So what you actually get at 3 degrees of separation from you is 125 people benefiting from a single small thing that you do. And it's like you chuck a pebble in a pond and you hear it plop and you walk away and you get on with the rest of your day. What you don't see is a wee ripple going like that and spreading out. And there's a lily pad at the other side that you're not seeing because you've walked away. And the lily pad's doing that. And it's got no idea why it's doing that, but it's doing that because of the wave. And the wave was caused by the pebble that you dropped in that set the wave in motion. But that's what happens when you drop a seemingly small act of kindness into someone's day and you walk away. It's like a wave. That the pebble is a metaphor for an act of kindness. And the wave is really just this 3 degrees of separation, these peaks of 5 and 25 and 125 people whose day, even in a small way, has improved, even a tiny little bit, simply because they're on the receiving end of a little thing that you said or did that you didn't even think was important. And that is one of the things that I really don't think we realize how potent kindness, little things actually are. And that's what keeps our society afloat.
Literally.
Yeah.
You talk about how, we've lost trust in being kind, or we've been let down, or we've been kind and someone hasn't been kind back and they might take advantage or whatever. But that ripple that does reach the shore, it does come back, but it might not come back from that person.
No.
But in my life, I've witnessed it coming back.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? And so again, we can be quite limited with it. Like, I give it to you, you give it to me, and then that's an exchange. But kindness doesn't really work that way, does it? You were saying it in the book.
It's not transactional.
It's not transactional.
It's not transactional. And we shouldn't think of it as transactional, because once we start thinking it was transactional, we lose the soul of the kindness. It's one of the things that I call nature's catch-22. And nature's catch-22 is that there is, what is factually true is there's mental and emotional, neurological, cardiovascular, immunological benefits to being kind. But you cannot get those benefits if you don't mean what you do. And I call that nature's catch-22. Because the only way you get those benefits are due to what the experience of kindness is like, what it feels like, that elevation. So when you help someone because of that experience, and it's a positive experience, that positive experience sets off this cascade of changes in the brain, in the heart, the immune system, and our cells all throughout the body. So the only way to feel that is to mean it. So you have to mean it to get these benefits. If you don't mean it, then you won't get the benefits. So I call that nature's catch-22. So nature somehow has it set up so that the only way the giver can benefit from an act of kindness, which they always do immediately in terms of physiologically, but through the ripple effect as well. The only way it benefits you is if you really mean what you say. If you don't mean it, if you're trying to get some sort of visibility or approval or people to think how cool you are for being kind, it still benefits the other person, of course, absolutely. Society wins anyway. but it doesn't benefit you because you don't feel it the same, in which case all of the cascade effects in the body come from the way what the experience is like, that positive experience is like for you. Nature's catch-22.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And you've teed up my next quote and question absolutely perfectly. Because when we're talking about this ripple effect out, you did mention just then how it obviously impacts and benefits your physiology, your health on the way out. So here's my next quote that I really liked. Who needs Botox when you can offer a friend a few kind words, hold some doors open, or let people in front of you in the traffic with a smile? The secret is to mean it. So we were already kind of talking about it,
Yeah.
But how does, and you've got loads in the book, but what do you want to share tonight about kindness helping your own physiology, your own health, etc.?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the Botox thing, that was a reference to a study that researchers were studying some of what causes accelerated aging in skin cells. And it's a phenomenon called oxidative stress. It's like the chemical cellular version of mental and emotional stress, but inside the body, it's called oxidative stress. It's just the chemical process that takes place inside the body when we're under, psychological stress or physiological stress, or even the stress of too much sunlight, too much intense sunlight, for example. And this oxidative stress is also more popularly known as free radicals. The accumulation of free radicals. So this is what causes the aging, or plays a big role in the aging of our skin cells. So the researchers put skin cells under stress in the lab to simulate the environment that occurs when we're under stress. And they found high levels of free radicals, oxidative stress, confirming that when our bodies are under stress, the body ages faster. Then they did the experiment again, but this time in the presence of what I refer to as kindness hormones. These are akin to stress hormones. Just like stress hormones are produced from an experience of stress, kindness hormones are what I call the internal products that are produced through an experience of kindness. And so they put these kindness hormones in the same environment, the same cells, and the levels of free radicals, i.e. oxidative stress, fell through the floor, dramatically dropped. And what that was saying is the effect of kindness hormones in our skin cells actually counteract some of the aging process. And it's one of the arguments that I pose for why kindness is the opposite of stress, because stress accelerates aging, causes this accumulation in our cells of free radicals, which is why actually lots of face creams use thing called antioxidants in them, because antioxidants are anti-oxidative stress. All they really are is they neutralize the stress in your cells. But kindness hormones do it as well, just far more efficiently because they're natural at it. So when I was referring to kindness better than Botox, I was kind of making light of that particular study. But I was also referring to a study that looked at the rate of aging of the brain, because part of the rate of aging of our brain, like that leads to in the long term age, memory loss, even dementia further down the line, and these kind of things. Free radicals play a role in that as well. So researchers were studying the way that the brain ages, and they took 105 people between the ages of 25 or 26 and 66. And they scanned their brains, and then they used machine learning to work out exactly what a brain looks like at different age time points. So exactly how a brain ages. So this is what the picture of a brain, the typical 26-year-old, the typical 27-year-old, and they got machine learning to work out what that kind of average sort of looks like. So now they had an accurate map that says, at different ages, this is what an aging brain actually looks like. And now what they did is they scanned the brain 4 times over a 14-year period of a Tibetan Buddhist monk who primarily practices a meditation style known in the West as metta, or loving kindness. Whereas where it's like mindfulness, but part of the focus is on thinking kindly of people. May you be happy and well and safe. May you feel at ease, and really meaning it, kind of thing. And also living according to compassionate principles. And amazingly, when the study finished, he was 41 years old. But according to this map that had been made with 105 people's brains, he was 41 years old. His brain was only 33. So his brain was 8 years younger. It's dramatically slowed the rate of aging of his brain, primarily through the practices that he was indulging in. Isn't that remarkable? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Remarkable. And I love that you're talking about oxidative stress because I've done a bit of research into that myself with the whole
Yeah,
mind
yeah,
body connection and healing
yeah,
side of things that I do. And it's really showing up more and more these days as the underlying cause of chronic health conditions,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
chronic oxidative stress,
Yeah,
from, like you say, from environmental stress, Wi-Fi, environmental toxins, but also the
yeah,
inner stress of how we're dealing with things. So I'm really glad you're talking
yeah,
about that. And I'm really glad that you're talking about, in a way, mindfulness and kindfulness, which is what my
yeah,
next thing I want to
yeah.
talk to you about. I want to talk to you about it because here in the Cam Clan, we love meditation. We're into meditation.
Mm.
We talk about meditation a lot and stillness and peace and all that sort of stuff. And I love how in the book you talk about mindfulness, but you also talk about its origins and
Yeah,
how it was divorced from its ethical roots, as you put
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, and how there's more to mindfulness than breathing, being present, and as you say it, having a digital quickie. Because you're saying that most mindfulnesses end up in apps, and and
And
and
if you think of the scaling of it, most people nowadays, statistically speaking, learn mindfulness from an app rather than from a teacher like yourself, for example.
and it loses some depth there
That
inevitably.
loses some of the. Whereas
You
if you
know,
transmit it, you're transmitting much more than just the 5 minute intro you get on an app. As a teacher, you transmit far, far because your presence and your calming, compassionate presence is part of the transmission of and what people are therefore learning.
well, I try my best to be a little bit calm here and there, but that's not the point. The point is, you talk brilliantly about it, and I think the guys listening to this would be really interested about the origins of mindfulness,
Yeah,
and what it lost when it kind of got divorced from its ethical
yeah,
roots. So can you talk a bit about
yeah.
that, please?
Yeah, this is actually where I start. This is where the book started because the original work title of this book was actually called The Art of Kindfulness.
Mm.
And I changed it 20,000 words in. About 3 months into a 7 month write, I changed the title to The Joy of Actually Giving a Fuck. I wanted to really elevate, as I said earlier, I wanted to elevate kindness from this kind of fluffy sentiment up to something really potent that we really take seriously in society. And I didn't feel that calling the book The Art of Kindfulness would get that point across as
No,
strongly.
no, you
So
end up in a total different section of the bookshop.
absolutely, absolutely. So I made that dramatic change, but I built it originally around that research. So Buddhist scholars had become concerned that because most people nowadays learn mindfulness very quickly, they'd been concerned that there might be consequences given that the original context that mindfulness was in was part of a set of guidelines known as the Buddhist Eightfold Path. And to cut a long story short, the Eightfold Path was a set of guidelines that help us to be and live more compassionately and kindly in how we think about people, how we feel about people, how we communicate with people, how we treat people, and also have more mastery over our own minds with the goal of being a more positive contribution to society. And so the Eightfold Path was about that. It was embedded within ethical roots, which is about compassion and kindness. But
But how
Buddhist,
many people, sorry to interrupt, but how many people that say, oh, yeah, I do mindfulness, has even heard of the phrase, the Eightfold Path?
very, very few. I mean, almost no one, in fact, other than Buddhist practitioners themselves. Yeah. And so, and it wasn't separated from that unkindly. So mindfulness
Mm.
meditation, the meditation style, was a small teaching, a small practical part on this Eightfold Path. So it was embedded within, it was supposed to be practiced and taught within the context of the compassion and kindness
Mm.
guidelines. But it had to be removed because an academic called John Kabat-Zinn uh, realized how absolutely powerful mindfulness could be, amazingly powerful. And he wanted it to be of benefit to people in the West, particularly people in hospital environments who were slipping through the cracks, who were really could benefit from the ability mindfulness has to get rid of some stress, help us to manage our state, and also to manage pain as a side effect of that. And so he pitched it to the hospital. the head of pain, orthopedics, and primary care. But he couldn't have pitched it within that original spiritual context, because you can't go around professing morals and ethics to vulnerable people. So he had to take all of that out and just pitch the technique itself of paying attention to the sound of your breath and the experience of breathing. And it was such a big hit. The hospital loved it. It benefited these patients so much that within a year, mindfulness meditation, or what eventually became known as mindfulness-based stress reduction, became an official part of the Department of Medicine over in Boston, at one of the big hospitals there. And then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And as it grew, it just, everyone, other than the original teachers of it, just lost the knowledge that it was originally embedded within a compassionate context. So these Buddhist scholars began to worry that, will that have consequences? And it turns out that it does in some way, that what mindfulness, as we typically understand it in the West, tends to do is it stretches us in the inside. It stretches us in the direction of who we naturally are. So kind people who practice mindfulness become kinder, which is something I've literally observed in people I know, like yourself. You know, the more you naturally kind people, naturally compassionate people who practice it, become even more so, softer, more gentler people. But what they also found is people who are more self-focused, people who are low in empathy, or have a worldview that's more about what I get out of this rather than what we all get out of that. More about me rather than we.
Or us.
Then they actually become less kind when they practice mindfulness. If this is where they were on the kindness scale before, they become less kind after practicing mindfulness. They become more self-absorbed when they practice mindfulness.
Do you know why? I mean, is there anyone that knows why?
It's partly because mindfulness makes us focus more. Then naturally, if you're naturally kind, then you will tend to your mind will gravitate towards what you see, opportunities to help other people out. You'll notice more people suffering, people needing a help. But if your focus is more on yourself and what's for me, then mindfulness will just deepen that focus. And you will drown out the world even more than you did before, because that's where the primary focus is, on me rather than we. And so that research confirmed exactly what the Buddhist scholars had been worried about, of mindfulness just being taught with a 5-minute app treatment without any understanding of the original context, which is actually why I made a big pitch in the book for kindfulness, which is what I defined as any form of mindfulness or meditation practice where even a small part of it is focused, even for a minute out of a 10-minute practice, is just focusing in a kind or compassionate way. Might be thinking kindly of people, even a wee silent prayer for someone, or it might just be educating yourself about the benefits of kindness and the physical effects you see in the world, but just a little bit of the focus, even before you start it, just on kindness, even thinking of someone that you know who's having a hard time, a silent prayer for them before you do your meditation practice. And then whatever meditation practice now becomes kindful, because you've put a tiny little bit of your beginning focus. All it actually does is it orients your moral compass. So whatever way you start it kind of sets, almost as if it sets the rudder in that direction, and it sort of takes hold and pushes it a little bit over there. Researchers found when we did that, then in a typical study where they compared mindfulness versus not mindfulness and measured people's kindness levels, everyone moved towards being more kind after doing mindfulness, regardless of their original focus, their original empathy level. If they had that little bit of education first, everyone became more kind after mindfulness.
It's kind of important to really know about the ethical roots of mindfulness and how in reality it should have probably been called kindfulness, but it probably wouldn't have taken such a massive effect. But
it's been, as you know, it's been enormously beneficial. I mean, you know more than anyone really, but all the different mental and physical benefits of meditation. So, you know, society has benefited hugely from meditation, and for the most part, most people get more out of it. You get a lot out of it. It's just it would help if we used a little bit of the focus towards kindness and put a little bit of the focus towards kindness. It's healthier for everyone and better for everyone in the terms of what that actually leads to in our lives.
And so the term you used in the book, which I loved, was to be mindfully kind.
Mindfully kind.
And you, that was kind of your overall take from what the Eightfold path was suggesting.
Yeah.
For those that don't know it, can you give us a quick overview? Because I think it's quite educational and important for what are the eight? What are the Eightfold path?
Oh God.
Do you remember off the top of your head? I've got them here if you need a reminder of any.
I probably get most of them.
Right view is number one.
It's right view.
Which means what?
Right view just means it's part of understanding that you're thinking positive. Your thoughts have consequences, so you're taking what they call a correct view of the world and a correct view of how things happen.
Right intentions number two. What's right intention?
It's actually right intentions quite similar. It's broadly speaking, it's have your heart in the right place. So make sure that your intentions are wholesome. Ultimately, they use the word wholesome a lot, meaning that don't intend bad things for people. If you want to win in life, you don't need someone to lose, kind of thing, for you to win. So it's having really wholesome, heart-centered intentions, or you're at least aware of the consequences of the intentions. And if you put them in the direction of the heart, then you tend to get better results. Negative intentions produce negative results as well. So right intention is quite broad, really.
Number three, right speech.
And right speech is then to elevating that and saying, okay, so this also applies not just to what I'm thinking and what I'm intending it to now, how I communicate. So one of the lines I used in the book is, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. Just like, well, I put it in slightly different words, like zip it kind of thing. But it means like, don't spread gossip. Don't say bad things about people. Don't really, just try to communicate the best you can, the more wholesome.
And scientifically, it's been found that when you do speak nasty about someone, their physiology changes.
Yeah,
they pick up on it.
Yeah.
And use that information as intended, as in not to intentionally hurt someone, but actually to make sure you're spreading kindness.
Absolutely.
Right action kind of makes sense. Number four.
Yeah. Well, right action is, again, it's elevating it from the thought. You have the right thinking, then you have the right speaking, and the next part of it naturally is how you express that in the world, but also recognizing that every action has consequences. Everything has an effect. So if your actions are unkind, then that will set off a chain reaction of consequences. If your actions are kind, that will set off a chain reaction. So what they're asking us to do is take accountability, taking responsibility by understanding the natural consequences of things. They're asking us to take responsibility for our actions, and therefore angle them in the direction of being fair and honest and just and kind.
Right livelihood.
I'm elaborating a lot more because I just put a couple of sentences in the book. I was really just skirting through them.
Right livelihood is the next one.
Yeah, and right livelihood is just really just living your life in what the Buddhists tend to call a wholesome way. I overly simplify everything in the book, but it's really just living your life in a wholesome way. So, for example, don't take a job or a career that is having a negative effect on society. Make sure that what you're doing in the world, if you can, is making a positive contribution, even in the smallest possible way.
I mean, some of these, it must be hard for you to come up with more, very specific examples or descriptions, because they're getting so similar. Right effort.
Yeah, they are very, very, they're very, very similar.
It's like eight ways of saying the same thing in a way, but it's with very subtle.
It's very subtle difference, but it's all about just being kind. It's all about just having, when it comes, right effort is really about being consistent with this.
Right.
So rather than just doing it the kind of once, right effort is just, and these guidelines aren't, you do this one and then you do this and then you do that. It's not about that. They're a holistic set of interconnected things, and right effort kind of underpins a lot of them, because it's saying, if you're going to be thinking, taking responsibility for your thinking and taking responsibility for the consequences of your words and the consequences of your actions, then it would be better for everyone and yourself if you were consistent with how you did that.
And for those that would be really annoyed if we didn't cover the last two.
Right mindfulness.
Right mindfulness and?
it's really just right mindfulness is really just about bringing your mindful. There's right mindfulness and right concentration, but it's about bringing your bringing. Well, part of it actually is the teaching of mind. This is where the teaching of mindfulness meditation comes in, but it's also about. So it's only one part in the path, the teaching of mindfulness meditation. It's one step, but it's also about being mindfully kind in life. It's just bringing your mindful attention to the present moment, because that tends to balance you and it tends to center you, and it means that you will have a more positive contribution on the people that you interact with in life.
So there you go, mindfully kind, mindfulness, kindfulness, the eightfold path, right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration for those that
Yeah.
may have missed one or whatever. That's really, really
I probably
cool.
would have missed one if I tried to recount them myself, because I've never, since I wrote the book, I don't think I've ever actually tried to recount them. Oh, I mean,
Well,
I can
it
tell you
was
what
just
they
really
are,
appropriate
but
for it was just really appropriate for this community to like kind of learn a bit
yeah,
more
yeah,
about that
dive into them.
and to see the origins of mindfulness. We don't really know about that. It's not very commonly shared. So I thought it was
Yeah.
really interesting for us.
Oh, thanks.
And so thanks for that.
And
Okay.
that's why what I was trying to do in the book was bring some of the traditional ethical parts back into mindfulness, back into mindfulness as a practice, but also back into how we live our lives.
Mhm.
And what I tried to do is in a much more modern way, so being mindfully kind is using almost all of the Eightfold Path, but just in how you live your life, how you communicate. So I just refer to it in a modern way as being mindfully kind as you go about your day, as you go about your life, being consistent with it.
And with all of these 10 steps this and 8 steps parts that we learn, it's not always about trying to engage your day, remembering all the 8. It's about knowing them. And often what happens is you recognize when you're not doing them,
That's it.
which
That's
so
exactly it.
it can be a correcting mechanism for us to kind of go, oh,
Yeah,
that wasn't really right speech, or is this thing I'm going to do in my job going to cause any harm or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
So
And I'm glad you said that, because people often have, for ages, referred to me as the king of kindness. And I always like to set that right straight and say, absolutely not. It might be the king of writing about kindness, but not of being kind, because I'm in awe of the people who are literally doing this stuff every day, who are literally on the front line, who have positions or ways that they do things in the world that just make them just wonderfully kind and gentle human beings. And I look up to them. For example, my mum, I would never think of myself as a better example of a good person than my mum. So I
Mhm.
certainly can't be champion. So I say kind of writing about kindness. And in fact, a journalist asked me when the book first came out, has writing about kindness and doing this book, has it made me a kinder person? And I say, yeah, but not in the way that you would think. It's made me kinder in the exact way that you pointed out, Sandy. It makes me notice where I fall short. It makes me notice where I don't manage quite so well to live
Mhm.
the principles that I aim to live. And then it becomes glaringly obvious to me where I've fallen short, and then I can correct it and try my best to do better next time. And so by writing about kindness, it simply made me aware of where I don't manage all that well, because life happens, and it's not all, life isn't always easy, and everyone has a different context. Some people, life can be really sweet and easy for a while, and other people are wading through a quagmire. Other people are having a really tough time of things right now, and really, really tough. And trying to consider the needs of someone else when you're literally just keeping your head above the water. It's no wonder for some people that what comes out doesn't sound very kind. And it's why I went to great lengths in the book also to say, don't judge people, because you really don't know what people are dealing with in their lives,
It's
So
often
we
a
can
cry for
only,
help.
yeah,
Bad
yeah,
so-called apostrophes, bad behavior or
yeah.
unkindness is often a cry for help,
Often a
you
cry
know,
for help, yeah.
and what they need is kindness at that moment
What
in
they need is
time,
kindness, yeah.
and I often say to people like to get annoyed at someone for not knowing how to be at peace makes no sense,
Mm,
and it's the same way, if someone can't be kind at that moment, they don't need unkindness back, you know, quite the
yeah.
opposite.
They
But
need
I think that's
exactly the
a
opposite.
mechanism of life that we often underestimate, or we almost
Yeah.
we don't we kind of ignore the reality of the situation in the world of self-help, positive psychology, all that sort of stuff is that you don't really learn much in your day when everything is going in the direction you want, and you're behaving exactly how you think you should today. It's only in the moments when we're not living up to our authenticity of what we know we stand for and what we want, etc., and how we want to be. It's only the moments that we're not doing that is actually we're able to actually learn something. We're actually able to grow and shift and change. And so
100%.
people go, I should never do that. They judge the fact that they have a bad moment, that they feel low, or they don't speak nice to someone or whatever. They judge the fact and they start being violent on themselves.
I know.
We need it. We need that.
We need it. I know. And it's natural. And it's part of what self-kindness is learning to be okay with the learning process, and learning that and acknowledging that you're only human. And you know, you can't possibly have the answers to everything. It's very difficult. Sometimes when life is more challenging, it's very difficult to be the model society member. So I think we need to cut each other a wee bit more slack, but also start with ourselves, cut ourselves a little bit of slack. You know, one of the things I was very open with my own, you know, times when I fall short in the book. And I used an example where I had a bit of an issue with parking at the time. Where I live on a really old street. It's half of it's cobbled. It's a really ancient, it's hundreds of years old street, but there's not a lot of parking. And there's a wee residence car park just, you know, 30 meters away. But there's a couple of Airbnbs in the area, and the people that come in to stay in the Airbnbs are not quite as considerate in how they park as all the residents are, because we know how to fit into the parking spaces. And sometimes you'll find, you know, we park like that so you can get 10 cars in, and someone from the Airbnb will come in, park along the way. Clearly, when everyone else parked there, they're just shoved the car or in like that or something. And the residents get quite irritated. And on that particular day, something like that had happened. And it, you know, sometimes stuff just gets in your head, and it takes like something to shunt you out of it. And I was driving down to the post office, which is, you know, a wee bit away from the house. And I'd circled round, and I saw a huge big parking space, easily enough for 2.5, maybe even 3 cars. And there was a car about to reverse park into it. And I thought, well, I'll wait and the person get in, and then he can see me clearly coming in. And it was probably 2.5 to 2 3/4 cars could have got in there. And he parked right in the middle.
I'd love to see this half car you're talking about. But anyway, keep going with your story.
In terms of life, you know,
keep going with your story.
Standard car lives. But, you know, but he parked right in the middle of this massive big space. And so there was not enough space at either end. Huge big space. And so feeling a little kind of irritable at the time with the whole parking thing, I made an attempt to reverse park into a space that my car could never possibly reverse. And I kept doing that out and all. And he could clearly see me. And eventually he got the point, and he shifted his car about 1 meter forward. He still had like 1 meter, 2 meters to go. And I managed to squeeze the car in. And now I do try to practice what I preach, but I found myself, I could see in the wing, in his rear view mirror, in his mirror. And I went like, as if to say, come on, man, you know, you could have been a bit more considerate. I didn't say that. I just went like that. I was trying to be kind, you know, not aggressive in any way, just like, come on, man, you could have helped me a bit there, sort of thing. And then that's the kind of thing you do regret if the person is about 6'6". But what happened next is it was a frail elderly gentleman who took about 3 minutes to get himself and a walking stick out of the car. And I felt absolutely terrible, because I saw in him, I saw my dad. Because I just lost my dad a few months before then. My dad had passed away. He had a brain tumor. And prior to my dad's diagnosis with the brain tumor, he'd lost his confidence driving. And he began to park in, my dad was always the best parker, but my dad could park in a space with literally 2 inches at either side. How he did it, I don't know. But my dad lost his confidence, and he started even overtaking wider. And that was because my dad, his age, and obviously the brain tumor. And in that moment, I suddenly, by falling short, I realized that the reason why that elderly gentleman had parked in such a big space is he was probably lost his confidence. And the last thing he needed was someone like me pressuring him to give him so that I could get in as well. You know, and in that moment of me falling short, I felt absolutely terrible. But I understood I'm also human. And what that experience has done is it just reminded me that you really don't know what someone's dealing with. And you've really got to take that idea of giving people a chance, cutting people some slack. You've really got to take that a lot further than we typically take in society, because I think a lot of people are, for one reason or another, are having a hard time in life, and they could benefit from a little bit more of our patience. But if you don't manage, don't give yourself a hard time, because we're only human, and it's through it's through having these experiences that we learn to do better next time.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.
You dedicated the book to your father, Robert Hamilton.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you to do that?
I feel that my dad's in the book quite a few times. I've told a few stories of my dad and things that are very relevant to the book, about being mindfully kind, about cutting people some slack because you never know what people are dealing with, even about kindness in leadership environments. Like if you work in the corporate world, what that looks like to be kind, to be a kind leader, kind of thing. And also I feel like my dad played a role in the genesis of the book, because shortly after my dad died, I didn't really feel like doing anything, and I didn't do anything at all. I took about 3 months off where I virtually did nothing. And then it was another, 3 or 4 months where I really I was kind of struggling a wee bit, I suppose, maybe background of depression. I just wasn't right. And when I thought I better come up with an idea to write the book. And I said a wee prayer to my dad, actually. And this is where I ended up, where I am now with the book. And also, when I said a prayer to my dad again when I had the previous title, that was the wrong title, The Art of Kindfulness. It wouldn't have elevated kindness up to that powerhouse that it is now. And so I feel that my dad, as well as making me feel loved in my life, he also played a role, I think, in the background of where this book came from.
That's beautiful. And I had a lot of other things to say today, but I think that's a really nice place, actually, to start to bring our conversation interview to a close. We'll stay on the line for those listening live so they can have a chat with you or ask any questions or stuff. But,
yeah.
What struck me when you were talking there was how these days you only get to pray to your dad if you want to talk to him. And I was really, really emotional hearing that, like we're so fortunate if this people we love are still here, and we don't have to revert to the praying to them to be able to communicate, but we actually they're still even here, and
I know.
Maybe we just be kinder.
Yeah.
Because one day we'll only be able to access them potentially through a prayer.
Yeah, it's a really good way to put it, Sandy. That's exactly what it's felt like, in that time. And it felt like for a while it just felt kind of odd, kind of strange. It just didn't feel right that my dad wasn't here. I'd never lost a close family member before. So
I think through that grief you found orifices of your heart that you maybe hadn't accessed before, and it enabled you to be able to write a book on kindness the way that you wrote it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for your kind support and your kind words.
And everyone, what does it? Go forth and be kind, I think you mentioned in the book.
Yeah. At the end of it, I said, go forth, be a kindness crusader. But I also say be kind because it's almost always the right thing to do.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode. Please like, subscribe, and write a review wherever you happen to be listening. It really does help to support me and this podcast. For more information about my one-to-one sessions, Calm Clan community, books and academy courses, head over now to minddetox.com.